goodness, there's like lights and stuff.
Hola, ¿sí? ¿Se escucha? 1, 2, 3, 4, ¿sí?
Uno, dos, tres. Uno, dos, tres.
Perfecto. ¿Me escuchan? ¿Sí se escucha, jóvenes? 1, 2, 3. ¿Sí? Sí, muy bien.
Así. Mejor. Bueno, está un poco.
Ah, sí. No sé cómo apagar, este no es mío. Cecilia, ¿cómo se apaga su celular? Buenas tardes a todos.
Good afternoon, everyone.
3 minutos. Oh. Ay, no, no, no. Buenas tardes a todos.
Good afternoon, everyone.
Mi nombre es Antonia Álvarez.
My name is Antonia Alvarez.
Soy presidente de la organización Pueblos de Lucha y Esperanza.
I'm the president of Pueblos de Lucha y Esperanza.
Estamos en la iglesia de Encarnación en Minneapolis.
We are in the Church of Incarnation in Minneapolis.
Y nuestra organización está conectada con Fe en Acción.
Our organization is connected with Fe y Acción, Faith in Action.
Antes de comenzar este foro, queremos pedir un minuto de silencio por todas las víctimas que murieron durante la pandemia por coronavirus, durante la administración pasada y que hasta el día de hoy no se han reconocido esas vidas. Inmigrantes indocumentados.
Before we get started with this forum, I would like to ask for a minute of silence for all the victims of undocumented immigrants that died during the last administration up until now that have not been recognized.
Muchas gracias a todos.
Thank you all.
A continuación queremos darle el paso a Padre Kevin que nos haga una oración para
Now-
poder salir adelante con esta reunión.
Now we would like to invite Father Kevin to give us a blessing, and then we'll continue with the meeting.
Como sabe la congresista Omar, no nos reunimos para hablar de todas las victorias. Estamos aquí para charlar de problemas, no? As our congressperson knows, when we get together with our leaders, it isn't just to say, isn't everything wonderful? It's to talk about problems. Pero quisiera sugerir de que empecemos con gratitud aun en las dificultades. I'd like to suggest we begin with just a little bit of gratitude, even in the midst of whatever problems there are. Just be quiet for one moment, please, and think of something that you're grateful for right now. Momento de silencio, a acordarnos todos de una causa de gratitud. Por tener voces, aunque no siempre respetadas, because we have voices even though they're not always respected. Somos agradecidos, Señor. For the lives of our people, even though they are often threatened por las vidas de nuestros hermanos, aunque con frecuencia amenazadas, te damos gracias, Señor. For the presence of our community leader, even though struggling with all of the limits of power, por la presencia de nuestra líder de comunidad, aún entre los límites del poder. We thank you, Lord, por la bendición de un día de sol y luz y mutuo respeto. We thank you for the blessing, a day of light and sun and mutual respect. And all these things we are grateful in your holy name. Amen.
Amén. A continuación, vamos a presentar a la audiencia que está aquí con nosotros
Next, we would like to present the audience that is here with us,
su nombre y la organización, por favor.
your name and your organization.
Empezamos con Gustavo.
Let's start with Gustavo.
A un lado de Gustavo.
Hello, my name is Paco Hernandez, also with the organization Compare.
Hello, my name is Eduardo Peñasco, and I'm collaborating with Compare too.
Samuel Estes, interpreter with Pueblos de Lucha y Esperanza.
William González, Unidos, Minnesota.
Marco Lovera, with Unidos Minnesota.
Fernanda Costa con Unidos Minnesota.
Martina Ramírez Torres, de Pueblos de Lucha y Esperanza.
Roberto Martínez, Gustavo.
Susana de León, Immigration Attorney with Unidos Minnesota. Sophie Green with Mira.
Atrás.
Lauren Harvey with Mira.
Gracias. Vamos a dar la introducción a la presentación a nuestra congresista.
Thank you. And now we'd like the Congresswoman to introduce herself.
Congresswoman Ilhan Omar, super grateful to be here with you all.
You want to say
Yeah,
something
okay.
more? Go ahead.
I didn't know if you were just saying our names, so. Well, thank you, Antonio, for inviting me here today. Thank you to Father Kevin for his wonderful prayer and for hosting us. Thank you to everyone for joining us in person and everyone who is tuning in to our live stream. I am grateful to be here today because I know that we all share the same values and commitment to immigration justice. That commitment includes our key priorities in the upcoming budget reconciliation bill. I will talk more about this in a little bit, but I want to start by talking about how immigrant justice is so much more than changing our broken immigration system. It means that when our federal government is providing relief due to the pandemic, that immigrants are not left out of programs for stimulus payments and child tax credits. I was horrified to find out that mixed status families were excluded from the first rounds of stimulus payments last year. I immediately introduced a bill that would ensure these families received stimulus payments, and mixed status families were included in the second and third rounds of payments. This summer, millions of families nationwide began receiving hundreds of dollars every month, drastically reducing child poverty and making sure that millions of children do not go to bed hungry. We made sure that our programs included mixed family status families. My team worked with the IRS to fix a glitch that was preventing many of these payments from going out to families. I also fought for expanding stimulus payments and child tax credits to everyone in this country, not just US citizens. While we have not achieved that yet, I know that you all and everyone in my district understand that the pandemic didn't impact only US citizens. In fact, it hit immigrant communities harder. Immigrant justice means providing excellent constituent services to make sure that people don't lose their jobs because of delayed work permit, that people aren't forced to raise their babies alone while their spouses are waiting for visa interviews abroad, that people in emergency situations can have their cases prioritized and reunite with their families sooner. If you or anyone you know has an issue with immigration agency, the IRS, or other federal agencies, please do not hesitate to contact our office. We can't fix every problem, but we can do everything to make sure that what we can do gets done. Lastly, immigrant justice means recognizing that our communities are not divided by citizenship or status, that the success of each of us is deeply connected to the success of those around us, that public health is individual health, especially during a pandemic. I know that you are all eager to talk about the budget reconciliation bill. I'm so grateful for your engagement with myself and my colleagues on how we can use this once in a generational opportunity to create pathways to citizenship, to expand free community college, and so much more. You might know that I'm deeply involved with the Congressional Progressive Caucus. I actually serve as its whip. The CPC is one of the largest groups in Congress. As the whip, my job is to connect the dots for all of our members, to use our collective power to improve legislation and make sure that the bills we are passing truly serve the people and not the wealthy interests. The CPC has led the cause of ensuring pathway to citizenship is included in this bill. That pathway would give millions of people who have DACA, TPS, DED, or farm workers status, as well as many essential workers, an opportunity to finally get a US citizenship. I know that we all need a pathway to citizenship for everyone, and I will keep fighting for that goal. Our priorities also include other important measures: ending the practice of counting family members towards visa caps, recapturing unused visas, allowing individuals with approved visa petitions to submit their applications for green card, lifting the 5-year ban on access to federal benefits, restoring child tax credit eligibility for immigrants. And we have been pushing to ensure the bill includes DACA recipients in the expansion of free community college. These priorities are driven by CPC, but they should be the priorities for every member of the Democratic Caucus in Congress and for every person who serves the House and the Senate. In addition to these core priorities, I've also joined many other efforts in the fight for immigrant justice in the reconciliation bill. I'm part of an effort alongside Representative Chuy Garcia, Presley, Bush, Talib, Ocasio-Cortez, Mander Jones, and Grijalva that demands we do not create additional criminal bars than those that already exist in law. We should also include a simple waiver provision. We know that our criminal justice system has unconscionable racial biases, and we should not build our immigration system upon those disparities. With that, I will send it back to you. I know many of you have questions, so I won't take much longer.
Yeah. No te
Sorry, was I
preocupes.
supposed to
No,
pause for
está bien.
translation? Okay.
Yeah, that's fine.
As a bilingual person, I should know this, but I
No,
apologize.
it's fine. Olvidé
I can give
decirles
you the remarks if you want.
I forgot to
que,
say
que tenemos a Melissa Martínez en video en vivo tratando de escribir lo más relevante de lo que la congresista está diciendo en español para tratar de guardar ese tiempo.
To try to save time, we have Melissa Martinez, who's doing some summary captioning to try to get as much of that as possible. And so just a note on that.
Y bueno, antes de comenzar con el propósito, queremos agradecerle, congresista, la firma en la carta del caucus negro en favor de este bill y esto del presupuesto de reconciliación.
So before we move on with the purpose, we'd like to thank you, Congresswoman, for your signature supporting the Black Congressional Caucus moving this forward.
Gracias. A continuación vamos a pasar con Marco para que nos dé el propósito de la reunión del día de hoy.
Now, Marco will talk about the purpose of today's meeting.
Good afternoon, Congresswoman Omar. Again, my name is Marco Hernandez with Copal. A little bit about the purpose for today. Hearing the remarks that you made, clearly we are aligned. A little bit more what we want to hear from this meeting is not only the adding overall more support for the immigration language within the budget reconciliation bill, but ultimately to convince your colleagues, especially Democratic colleagues who are either more moderate or a little bit iffy about supporting this immigration language within the budget reconciliation bill. Ahorita lo voy a decir en español. Buenos días, congresista Omar. Yo me llamo Marco Hernández, soy parte del grupo de Copal. El propósito de hoy es hablar sobre la legislación de presupuesto de reconciliación. Adentro de ese presupuesto es la reforma migratoria para los que tienen TPS, quienes son los trabajadores esenciales, trabajadores agricultores y también los que tienen DACA. Y ya escuchando sobre lo que dijo la congresista, sabemos que tenemos un mismo camino y andamos viendo el mismo página también. Y pues, además de su apoyo para este lenguaje, queremos que convences a sus colegas demócratas que no saben que si van a apoyar este lenguaje para votar para esta reforma migratoria para nuestra comunidad.
Gracias. Vamos a empezar con los testimonios y queremos invitar al señor Emilio González para que nos dé su testimonio y su hija Emilia González va a ser quien nos va a ayudar a hacer la interpretación para don Emilio. Gracias, don Emilio.
So we're going to have some testimonies now, starting with Emilio González, interpreted by Emilia González.
Buenas tardes a todo el público presente. Mi nombre es Emilio González. Soy un líder de Unidos Minnesota y un sobreviviente de COVID-19.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Emilio Gonzalez. I am a leader with Unidos Minnesota and I'm a COVID-19 survivor.
A partir de la pandemia, nos comenzaron a llamar trabajadores esenciales, pero en realidad siempre hemos sido esenciales.
During the pandemic, they started calling us essential workers, and I just want to make clear that that we've always been essential.
Yo tengo 30 años viviendo como indocumentado en este país, trabajando en fábricas, construcción y empacando alimentos. Yo me enfermé de COVID en este último empleo.
I've lived as an undocumented worker for 30 years in Minnesota. Some of the jobs that I've had have been construction, factory, manufacturing, production, and lastly, food production worker. And in this last job is where I got sick with COVID.
Esta enfermedad me dejó incapacitado. Estuve meses en cuidado intensivo. He tenido múltiples transfusiones y sigo en espera de un trasplante.
This deadly illness has left me unable to work. I was in the intensive care unit for months, I received many transfusions, and I'm still waiting for an organ transplant.
Muchos de nosotros sobrevivimos sin plan de retiro, seguro de desempleo y ningún beneficio después de 30 años de trabajo.
Many of us survived this pandemic to find out that we don't have support systems. I don't have unemployment insurance. I can benefit for retirement benefits. And we don't have many social support to be able to stand up on our feet after we survive.
Ahora es momento de cambiar y apoyar un camino fuera de las sombras para millones de nosotros.
Now it's the time to support all of us, millions of us, to come out of the shadows and find a pathway for citizenship for our community.
Muchas gracias por su atención.
Thank you so much for your attention. I want to cry.
¿Puedes agregar algo, Emilia,
Yeah.
por favor?
So, my name is Emilia González Ábalos. I'm director of Unidos Minnesota. And the gentleman that just spoke is my father. I came as a youth to Minnesota. I was 13 years old when I came here. And when I joined the Dreamer movement in the early 2000s, we were, one of the lines was that we came to this country with no fault on our own. And I just want to name for all of us that it's important to move us away from the narrative and be really clear that we are in this community, that we're surviving and building powerful coalitions because we stand on the shoulders of our undocumented parents. And I am very proud of my father. I am very grateful for his sacrifice. And we will fight tooth and nail to make this happen. So yo quiero decir que él es mi papá, que yo llegué como un adolescente a los Estados Unidos y que cuando yo empecé a organizar en el movimiento con Dreamers, nos decían que nosotros vivimos aquí sin una culpa, que nos trajeron sin una responsabilidad. Y solamente quiero nombrar que es importante cambiar esa narrativa, tener conciencia que nosotros venimos aquí y estamos parados en las sombras de todos nuestros trabajadores indocumentados, de nuestras familias de estatus mixto, y es una obligación moral, pero también una obligación, una responsabilidad de nuestros tiempos, asegurarnos de pelear con todo lo que tenemos para ganar esta reforma migratoria y seguir apoyando para que hasta que consigamos los 11 millones y transformemos el paradigma que empuja a nuestras comunidades a migrar por situaciones económicas en el capitalismo global. Muchas gracias.
Gracias, Emilia. A continuación vamos a pasar a Cecilia.
Hola a todos. Mi nombre es Cecilia Ramírez Torres. Vivo aquí por más de 20 años. Asisto a la iglesia de la Asunción en Richville y estoy en la lucha por esos 20 años y soy miembro de Pueblos, Lucha y Esperanza.
Hi, my name is Cecilia Ramirez Torres, and I've been living in this country for over 20 years. I go to the Church of Asunción, and I'm a member of Pueblos de Lucha y Esperanza.
Para una vida mejor. Soy emigrante indocumentada. Mi sueño es poder ver a mi madre, que no veo desde todo este tiempo, y ella está enferma y no puede caminar.
And so I'm an undocumented immigrant. And in all of this time, I haven't been able to see my mom. That's my dream, to go see her. And she can no longer walk, and she's been sick.
En tiempo de la pandemia, yo estuve desinfectando en el centro de Minneapolis unos apartamentos de personas de la tercera edad. Fue para mí muy difícil. Para mí, ya que ponían toque de queda por el asesinato de George Floyd, y para llegar pagaba taxi o pedía ride, porque no manejo y ponía en peligro mi vida y a los que me daban ride.
So during the pandemic, I was disinfecting apartments where people who are elderly live in downtown Minneapolis. And after the killing of George Floyd, when there were curfews, it was very difficult to travel. I had to take a taxi or ask someone to give me a ride, and I put myself and the people giving me a ride in danger.
La vida de todos los emigrantes no ha sido fácil y nuestros hijos tienen hijos ciudadanos aquí, porque nuestras vidas están aquí y en nuestros países ya tampoco tenemos nada.
And so our life hasn't been easy here. Our children have children, and they are U.S. citizens. We don't have connections to our countries anymore. Our lives are here.
Nuestra esperanza es que usted haga algo para nosotros. Entonces se realizará nuestro sueño americano con el camino a la ciudadanía. Gracias.
So our hope is that you can do something for us. We want to come to realize our American dream with a path to citizenship. Thank you.
A continuación vamos a pasar el testimonio de Roberto.
Next, we have a testimony from Roberto.
Mi nombre es Roberto Martínez.
My name is Roberto Martinez.
Muchas gracias, congresistas, por estar acá.
Thank you, Congresswoman, for being here.
Quería decirle que se ve más hermosa en presencia que en televisión.
I want to say that you look more beautiful here in person than on TV.
Soy originario de El Salvador.
I'm from El Salvador.
Y vine hace 21 años.
And I came 21 years ago.
Tenemos la esperanza de crecer. Tenemos la esperanza de ser felices.
We have the hope to grow and to be happy.
Pero muchas veces hay obstáculos en nuestra vida que debemos que cruzarlos.
But many times there are obstacles in our lives that we have to cross.
No le tuvimos miedo al desierto ni a las lluvias.
We weren't afraid of the desert or the rains.
No le tuvimos miedo ni aún a la muerte.
We weren't afraid even of death.
Cuando llegamos acá nos dieron una oportunidad.
When we came here, we had opportunities.
Pero esa oportunidad nosotros la tomamos como un logro.
And we took that opportunity as an achievement.
Pero no como una victoria.
But not as a victory.
Porque todavía sigue la lucha.
Because the struggle still continues.
Cuando nos dieron ese logro, pudimos lograr tener muchas cosas materiales.
And so when we got what we got, we were able to get certain material things.
Pero no la felicidad completa.
But not complete happiness.
Porque todavía estamos en el riesgo que dejamos a nuestros hijos y familia acá y nos quieren mandar a nuestros países de origen.
Because there's still the risk that we'll have to leave our children and our families here and that they'll send us back to our countries.
Por eso que necesitamos de todos.
That's why we need everyone.
Con la ayuda de Dios y de la de ustedes.
With God's help and with your help.
Yo sé que usted gasta de su tiempo para escucharnos.
We know that you're spending time here to listen to us.
Y eso en realidad tiene también su recompensa.
And we know that you will be compensated for that.
Vuelvo a repetir, tenemos unos sueños que cumplir.
I want to repeat again, we have a dream that we want to fulfill.
Tal vez no solamente es una casa.
And it's not just a home.
Mientras no la convertimos en un hogar.
Not just a house that we haven't converted into a home.
Podemos tener un vehículo.
We can have a vehicle with the best vehicle in the world.
Pero no puede ser el utensilio para movernos libremente.
But it's not useful for us to move around freely.
Porque cuando nos miran nos tildan sin conocernos.
Because when they see us, they stop us without recognizing us.
Y este es momento todavía de cambiar toda esa historia.
And this is the time to change the story.
Y lo podemos empezar aquí y ahora,
And we can start right here,
con la
right now,
ayuda de cada uno de nosotros.
with the help of every one of you.
Seguimos adelante. No hay que rendirnos.
Let's move forward. We can do this.
Podemos llegar hasta el final y cumplir nuestros sueños. Muchas gracias.
We can go to the end and fulfill our dreams. Thank you.
Gracias, Roberto. Y solamente para agregar, Roberto tiene el programa de TPS.
And so thank you, Roberto. And I just want to say that Roberto has TPS.
Ahora vamos a pasar con Saraí.
Next is Sarai.
Hi, everyone. Very nervous, so excuse me if I... Hello, thank you all for being here today. My name is Sarah. I'm here on behalf of MIRAC, the Minnesota Immigration's Right Action Committee. As a DACA recipient, I would like to share our struggles with you and if you could share with the administration. The facts are, we are between 600,000 and 800,000 individuals on DACA, some who are now parents to 250,000 US citizen children. We have made vital contributions to our communities as healthcare workers, teachers, military personnel, consumers, and neighbors. The American people depend on Dreamers. In the next 10 years, Dreamers will contribute $433.4 billion to the GDP and $12.3 billion in taxes to Social Security that we do not benefit from. Social Security and Medicare. During the pandemic, we are needed more than ever to help this nation recover and keep prospering. We have learned, grown, and contributed for many years, and it's time for us to say enough is enough. Congress has failed us time and time again to give us a real solution and have left us with unfulfilled dreams. Our place is here and not in the shadows. As stated by the National Immigration Forum, Congress should pass a permanent legislative solution that protects Dreamers and provides us with a permanent legal solution and legal status, benefiting the American workers and our nation. Thank you for listening to us today. I do want to leave you with one open-ended question, which is, what actions and what support do you need to take the next steps to help our parents, the original Dreamers, and the rest of us permanently call this nation our home? I'm just going to repeat it in Spanish, so bear with me. Okay. Hola, gracias a todos por estar aquí. Mi nombre es Saraí, soy parte de MIRAC, el Comité de Acción para los Derechos de Inmigrantes de Minnesota. Como beneficiador de DACA, me gustaría compartir mis luchas con ustedes y la administración. Los hechos son, somos entre 6 y 800 mil de individuales con DACA, algunos que ahora somos padres de más de 250,000 niños ciudadanos estadounidenses. Hemos hecho contribuciones virtuales a nuestras comunidades. Como proveedores de atención médica, maestros, personas militar, consumidores y vecinos. El pueblo estadounidense depende de los soñadores. En los próximos 10 años, los soñadores contribuirán más de 433.4 billones al PIB, que significa Producto Interno Bruto, y 12.3 billones a los impuestos al Seguro Social y Medicare. Durante la pandemia necesitamos más que nunca, los necesitan más que nunca, para ayudar a esta nación a recuperarse y poder seguir prosperando. Hemos aprendido, crecido y contribuido durante muchos años. Es ahora que digamos que ya es suficiente. El Congreso nos ha fallado una y otra vez para darnos una solución real y nos ha dejado sueños incumplidos. Nuestro lugar es aquí y no en las sombras. Como lo declaró el Foro Nacional de Inmigración, el Congreso debería aprobar una solución legislativa permanente que nos proteja a los soñadores. y nos brinde un estatus legal permanente, beneficiando a los trabajadores estadounidenses y a nuestra nación. Le pedí gracias a la congreguista por estar aquí y la pregunta que le hice es, ¿qué acción tomará o qué soporte necesita ella para poder legalizar a nuestros padres, los soñadores originales, y también a vosotros, llamar a esta nación nuestro hogar permanente? Gracias.
Muchas gracias. Congresista, le podemos dar como unos 3 minutos para que nos dé sus respuestas y después vamos a pasar con preguntas y respuestas.
Congresswoman, we'd like to give you a few minutes to respond, and then we're going to have some time for questions.
Well, first of all, I would like to thank you all for your wonderful and powerful testimonies. Mr. Gonzalez Press, I have known your daughter for a really long time. I have known her to be a warrior and a brave movement builder. It is great to see where she gets that from. As someone who lost her father to COVID, I am glad you are here. And I am ashamed of the fact that we are not able to do everything for you possible as a member of our community. And it is my pledge to you that I will do everything that I can to make sure that you have the ability to get the full services that is available to every member of our community.
Señor González, he conocido a su hija por muchos años y es maravilloso de conocerle a usted y conocer todo el valor que ella tiene viene de usted. Y yo perdí a mi papá durante esta pandemia, y entonces qué bueno que esté aquí con nosotros. Y es una vergüenza que no hemos podido ofrecerle más. Y voy a seguir luchando para que usted tenga todos los servicios necesarios y a todos los inmigrantes tengan más y un camino a la ciudadanía.
To Amelia, Cecilia, Roberto, and Sarahin.
Sarai.
Okay.
Sara.
You know, I hope it's something that you all probably know as someone who's lived 4 years with an undocumented status in a foreign country fleeing possible death. I can't truly comprehend what it must feel like to live it as long as you all have lived it. And I think for those of us who know the sacrifices we individually make and the sacrifices that our parents make to seek safety for us, and to recognize that we live in a world where there are international laws that guarantee asylum rights to people, and to know that there is no life to Roberto, that our safety and our lives are not temporary. And to live with a temporary status is to deny that reality. And to know that we are here in a country that prides in itself on its rich immigrant history, to have nearly 11 million people or more that are not incorporated fully into our society, who not only live in the shadows but continue to be protective members of our society, is quite shameful. And while some of my colleagues might not know that and recognize that, I do. And I will continue, again, to share your stories, to humanize, and to uplift the dignity of all of you in every room I'm in.
Entonces, como yo tengo la experiencia de huir de un país por mi seguridad y llegar como inmigrante, aunque todavía no entiendo toda la experiencia de vivir con eso y con el riesgo y la falta de seguridad por tanto tiempo. Y es importante los sacrificios que ustedes han hecho y los sacrificios de sus papás. Sabemos que la ley internacional garantiza los derechos a seguridad y que tener un estatus temporáneo con muchos riesgos no está bien. Es una vergüenza que en un país que reconocemos que es un país de inmigrantes y es nuestro orgullo la historia de tantos inmigrantes, que tenemos 11 millones de inmigrantes sin estatus migratorio. Y desafortunadamente mis colegas no reconocen esa realidad, pero voy a seguir luchando, voy a seguir compartiendo sus historias con ellos.
Vamos ahora a pasar con Susana de León con preguntas.
We're going to pass it now to Susana de León with some questions.
Muy buenas tardes, representante Omar. Nos da mucho gusto que esté con nuestra comunidad el día de hoy, siempre tratando de ayudarnos y sus palabras nos han tocado el corazón. Thank you, Representative Omar, for taking the time to be with us today. Your words are always soothing and touch our souls in such a big, potent way that I know half the room right now feels really humbled by everything that you have said. Y todos nos sentimos un poco como más humildes, ¿verdad? Por lo que hemos escuchado. And some of these questions come from the larger community. And so you might have addressed some of these answers, but I'm going to pose you these questions, and perhaps if there is something that we can gain a better understanding in, that you can go into that. Algunas de estas preguntas vienen de parte de la comunidad y hemos oído, ella ha tocado en algunas de estas respuestas, pero en este momento podemos ahondar un poco y tener más detalle de lo que pudiera ser esta respuesta. Estas preguntas vienen de la gente de fuera, ¿verdad? Aquí es como si estamos todos juntos. We understand that 8 million people could be eligible during this process of reconciliation, and people want to know, what would you do to ensure that the language of the bill stays as expansive as possible so that we can include as many of our communities as possible?
We're supporting the legislation in itself, the Citizenship Act, to be incorporated into the reconciliation process. And right now, every committee of jurisdiction is doing their markup, which is the process you go through to take a bill to becoming law in the committee. I don't sit on the Judiciary Committee, and so I might not have a lot of influence on that language, but the list of colleagues I listed earlier who have been working with us are, and I will make sure I bring back this conversation and insist that they try to keep as much of the language as possible.
hay una propuesta de ley que se llama el Acto de Ciudadanía que queremos incluir en esta legislación y están en el proceso de revisar y editar esta propuesta de ley. No estoy en los comités, pero voy a hablar con mis colegas y hacer lo que puedo para influenciar y mantener este acto de ciudadanía.
And I will say that one of the pieces that could happen, and we don't have confirmation at the moment, is that the parliamentarian in the Senate might say that it is not possible for us to have pathway to citizenship be included in the final passage in the Senate.
Bueno, algo para tomar en cuenta es que hay alguien que se llama el parliamentarian, el árbitro de las reglas del Senado, y es posible que esa persona dice que no se puede incluir las partes de este acto de ciudadanía dentro de la propuesta de ley de reconciliación presupuestaria.
I have said time and time again that the rulings from the parliamentarian are advisory, and they should be disregarded if they don't do what we think should be done. But I'm not in the Senate, and we have two Minnesota senators that could push for that. And I think it would be really important for our communities here in Minnesota to make it clear that we want our senators to disregard the parliamentarian ruling if the parliamentarian thinks pathway to citizenship should not be included in the reconciliation bill. And I think right now is the time to get a commitment from our two senators on that.
Y yo siempre he dicho que el parliamentarian, este árbitro, que lo que ella dice son consejos, no son leyes, y entonces el Senado puede tomar lo que dice o puede no tomar en cuenta lo que dice. Y tenemos dos senadoras de Minnesota que están en el Senado y pueden tomar ese punto de vista de seguir adelante con sus consejos o sin sus consejos. Y es muy importante de hablar con ellas, de enfatizar que esto es tan importante y que deben de seguir adelante sin importar lo que el parliamentarian dice.
So you have answered some of our questions, which is what can we do? Entonces ha contestado una de las preguntas, ¿no? Que ¿qué más se puede hacer? And you know, people out in the field also wants to know how can we have already different laws, and you know, like DACA, TPS, and there's always some sort of criminal penalty attached to those laws, and we believe that anyone who commits a crime should be dealt with in the system that already exists to deal with crimes, but not to have immigration be one of those consequences. Entonces sabemos que en el TPS, en DACA, ¿verdad? Hay partes que criminalizan a un tipo de comportamiento y que quitan a la persona de tener ese beneficio. Y nosotros como comunidad entendemos que si alguien se comporta de un modo, debe de tener una consecuencia, pero esa consecuencia debe de estar dentro del rango criminal y no debe de incluir inmigración, puesto que son cosas distintas, diferentes. And so the question is, what can you do to keep this harmful language? You already touched on that earlier, that language is there. And you also talked about waivers, which is the most important thing. As an attorney, I know that many times we have waivers for all kinds of things. Like something happened back in 1980 when somebody came to the country and didn't disclose something. And so then we have 212s and we have 601s and all that. Entonces ella habló hace un momento también de los perdones y le estoy preguntando ¿qué se puede hacer para evitar ese lenguaje? Ya habló ella también de estos perdones que como abogados sabemos que alguien puede haber hecho algo en 1980, ¿no? Y hay un perdón 212 o un perdón 601 que uno paga y pide perdón. ¿Cuál es la posibilidad de estos perdones?
I mean, it is, you know, one of those things that is being debated in Congress, right? Because we have a lot of people who feel very strongly
Yes.
on both sides of this argument. And you know, as we have a broader conversation about the harms of deportation and how that is actually counterproductive, right, to the sort of humane immigration policies that we want to propose. We are actively saying that people are facing danger. We should have them come and, you know, be members of our society here, and then we're saying, well, we should take you back into harm's way. And you know, there's obviously, I'm not a lawyer, you are. There's a lot of waivers that are possible, but it is a very fluid conversation, and you know, I will say that as it stands, I have not seen yet, and I will, you know, let you all know if it seems too hard for us to be able to pass legislation that is not going to farther the criminalization of the immigrant communities. But I don't feel like that is where we are stuck at the moment.
Bueno, es parte de la conversación, el debate de los perdones. Hay personas que están en favor, otros que están en contra fuertemente. Y pensando en el sistema de inmigración, si queremos un sistema de políticas humanas, entonces no tiene sentido estar deportando a personas si están en riesgo y no tienen seguridad en el caso de deportación. La verdad, no sé todo si es como la parte más importante, pero si logro conocer más o si sale más del debate, les voy a avisar.
Thank you. And there is an ask from the community if you could tweet your support for the reconciliation bill to protect essential workers, DACA and TPS. Y por último, una pregunta, una petición de parte de nuestra comunidad, si ella puede mandar un mensaje en Twitter apoyando el proceso de reconciliación, apoyando a los trabajadores esenciales como don Emilio, a los estudiantes de DACA y a las personas que tienen el TPS. Thank you.
You know, we formulated a list of priorities, 5, for the reconciliation bill. And immigration was number 3 on that list of priorities. And so we will continue to make sure it is spoken to and uplifted throughout the process.
Thank you.
Bueno,
Hicimos una lista de 5 prioridades en esta propuesta de ley de reconciliación y inmigración fue número 3 en la lista. Y vamos a seguir adelante enfatizando inmigración y los demás de la lista.
gracias, Samuel. Y queremos agradecerle, pero antes de que cerremos, queremos preguntar, congresista Ilhan, ¿cómo podemos seguir contactándole rápidamente a usted en caso de cualquier movimiento con el parlamentario o con el Senado para que podamos mover una estrategia en conjunto a nivel nacional como comunidad y que aseguremos que vamos a ganar y que usted es una de nuestras campeonas nacionales con las que nos sentimos bien orgullosos de estar en este equipo luchando juntas.
And so we know you're one of our champions. We're very proud to have you. And we'd like to know, how can we get into contact with you as quickly as possible, especially with the intricacies of the Senate bill and the parliamentarian on what to do and how to move this forward?
Well, there's contact information for me on these handouts. My staff is here. Nikki's cards people can take. Nikki handles immigration in our office. You know, I think it is today's the 12th, right?
Today is 12, yeah.
And so we have 15 more days, possibly before this bill comes to vote, to be voted on. And I think it's going to be really important for us not to only stay in touch, but to increase our advocacy and outreach to other colleagues and other offices, especially other members in the Minnesota delegation. I do find myself sometimes lonely in my advocacy on behalf of our immigrant communities. And so, anything that we can do to make sure that the urgency is also being felt by the Minnesota congregation, Minnesota delegation. We're in a church of like congregation. The Minnesota delegation and other members who are not who don't see immigration as personal as I do, and also are not progressive in these issues as well.
Entonces vamos a dejar la información de contacto del contacto de inmigración, Nikki, que está ahí en la mesa, su tarjeta de presentación. Y la otra cosa es que los demás de la delegación de Minnesota necesitan escuchar de ustedes, porque tenemos más o menos 15 días para pasar algo y no apoyan tanto a las reformas migratorias los demás de la delegación de Minnesota. Necesitan escuchar de ustedes.
And I just want to, I don't know if Amelia is still here, but but it is because of your work, your advocacy, your willingness to risk everything to be out there and sharing your stories that something as comprehensive as the Citizenship Act is being considered. And I know it is exhausting, right? It's dehumanizing to continue to have to tell your story and to like strip that little privacy that you have about the challenges that you face every single day. But organizing works, and stories are the bedrock of organizing. And we are this close because of you. And so keep going, because I believe we will win.
Entonces, quiero decir que es por sus esfuerzos que estamos en este punto ahorita, que ustedes han compartido sus historias, han organizado y por eso estamos muy cerca. Y sé que es una lucha difícil y se sienten a veces agotados y que están quitando su humanidad, compartiendo tanto, dejando su privacidad, pero funciona lo que están haciendo. Y entonces les quiero decir que sigan adelante. Nosotros podemos hacerlo.
Queremos agradecerle a la congresista por su tiempo del día de hoy. Sabemos que se tiene que ir. Mañana vamos a tener un foro con arzobispos a nivel nacional en Fe en Acción. Este no es tiempo para dormir o descuidar la campaña. Este es el tiempo donde a nivel nacional tenemos que seguir haciendo acciones. Nos queda bien poco tiempo para poder ganar. Eso es mi esperanza. Son más de 20 años haciendo esta lucha sin ver ese derecho al camino a la ciudadanía para todos. Muchísimas gracias, congresista, y queremos pedirle si nos deja tomar una foto con ella, ¿verdad? ¿Sí? Okay.
So I'd like to thank the Congresswoman. We know you have to get going, but we're wondering if you have time for a photo with us. And
No,
also,
and thank you. I work for you, so thank you for agreeing to do this.
Thank you.
y gracias a ustedes. Yo trabajo por ustedes.
Gracias. Entonces, le damos un aplauso y nos ponemos todos atrás. Ahora, vengan todos con la máscara. Todos con su máscara y nos ponemos atrás de la congresista. Y en un grito vamos a decir, ¿se puede? Y todos, sí se puede, ¿verdad? Ok, ¿listos? Entonces, vamos a decir, ¿quién va a tomar la foto de nosotros? Ah, ok. Entonces, vamos a decir un ¿se puede?
Sí, se puede.
¿Se puede?
Sí, se puede.
¿Se puede?
Sí, se puede.
¿La lucha?
Sigue.
¿La lucha?
Sigue.
¿La lucha?
Sigue.
Muchas gracias a todos por estar aquí. Thank you so much. Es que te faltó esa parte del video.
La lucha sigue.
This year we have a champion. For you. I can take a picture and share it.
Awesome. And I'll email you all the photos later.